Hello and welcome to the Prelims Practice session for the coming preliminary examination of 2020. In this video, we'll be discussing 10 questions from the current affairs of the August month. And in this, we have taken questions from some important topics that were in news in that month. For example, we have created questions based on the INF treaty, which was in news because the US had withdrawn from this treaty. Then there is question related to Eastern Economic Forum, and that was in news because the Prime Minister of India had announced the support of $1 billion to be invested in the Russia's Far East. So there are various other important questions that have been created based on important current affairs of the August month. So in this line, you can revise the important current affairs of the August month from the Focus magazine. And also you can revise these topics from the DNS or the Daily News Simplified videos. Further, it needs to be reiterated that you should practice more questions based on these current affairs. And for this, you can always subscribe to our test series where we have provided current affair related tests for specific months. So let us start this discussion and stay tuned for more videos.
Now the first question that we are discussing here is related to the recent withdrawal of the United States of America from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty or the INF Treaty. And this particular current affair was in news in the month of August. So before discussing this question, let us look at the way in which UPSC has asked questions in the previous year's preliminary examinations related to such kinds of treaties that were in news. So if you look at these two questions, these were asked in the year 2011 and they were asked in these years because they were in news in those years. For example, this question that was asked in 2011 was related to the USA's support for India's membership in the multilateral export control regimes called the Australia Group and the Wassenaar Agreement. Again, the New START Treaty was in news in the year 2011. Now, as far as this question is concerned, the correct answer here was D, that is neither the statement 1 nor the statement 2 are correct. And regarding this question that was asked in 2011, the New START Treaty was in news because it is a bilateral strategic nuclear arms reduction treaty between the United States of America and the Russian Federation. Further, if you look at these two questions, these were asked in the year 2017 and 2018. And regarding the question that was asked in 2017, it was related to the nuclear security summits and also related to International Panel on Fissile Materials. And in this question, both the statements were incorrect because the nuclear security summits are held under the aegis of United States of America and not the United Nations. And the second statement, that is the International Panel on Fissile Material, is not an organ of International Atomic Energy Agency. And regarding the question that was asked in 2018, it was related to the additional protocol with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And it is related to the civil nuclear reactors which come under the IAEA safeguards. So after these questions, let us look at the way in which we have formed a question related to this INF treaty that was in news in the August month of 2019. So this question reads that United States of America has recently withdrawn from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty or the INF treaty. And which of the following statements is or are correct about this INF treaty? So regarding this question, you should note that the US and after that, Russia had announced separately that they would suspend their obligations under this INF treaty. Now the US has formally withdrawn from this INF treaty, and Russia, although it has announced that it will not oblige with the INF treaty, it is yet to move out or withdraw from this treaty. So in this regard, the first statement reads that it requires all the nuclear weapon states to eliminate and permanently forswear all of their nuclear and conventional ground launch, ballistic and cruise missiles with ranges of 500 to 5,500 kilometers. And the second statement is that the INF treaty ban originally applied only to the US and the erstwhile USSR. Now in such questions, you should carefully read the statements that are given in the questions. For example, the first statement reads that it requires all the nuclear weapon states. So this statement becomes incorrect because it does not require all the nuclear weapon states to eliminate and permanently forswear all their nuclear or other ballistic and cruise missiles. However, originally this treaty required that the United States of America and the Soviet Union eliminate or permanently forswear all of their nuclear and conventional ground launch, ballistic and cruise missiles. And hence this first statement becomes incorrect because it does not apply to all nuclear weapon states. Again, if you look at the second statement, the INF treaty ban originally applied only to the USS and the erstwhile USSR. Now, this statement is correct because it was signed in the year 1987 and originally it was meant to be applied only to the US and the erstwhile USSR. However, after the breakup or the disintegration of the USSR, it applied to 5 countries which were the successor countries after the USSR broke or disintegrated. And hence this treaty applies to the Belarus, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Russia and the United States. And now the USA has formally withdrawn from this INF treaty. So to read more about the INF treaty, you should go through the Focus magazine of the September month. And hence the correct answer that comes out here is B, that is 2 only. So after this discussion, we find that important arms control treaties are important for us from the preliminary examination. As we have seen that a question has been asked in the year 2011 related to the Australia group and the Wassenaar group. And also in the same year, a question was asked related to the New START treaty. Again, in the year 2017 and 18, questions have been asked related to the Nuclear Security Summit, etc. So such kind of information that are in news can be extremely important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And hence, because this INF treaty was continuously in news, and hence it becomes extremely important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. With this, let's take up the next question. Now, the second question is related to another important current affairs from the August month, and it is related to the Coalition for the Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. And it was recently launched by the Prime Minister of India. So in this context, let us look at the question that was asked by the UPSC in the previous years. So if you look at this question, it was asked in the year 2016, and it was related to another important initiative of India. And this is known as the International Solar Alliance. So regarding this, the question read, consider the following statements, and the first was that the International Solar Alliance was launched at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in 2015. And second was that the alliance includes all the member countries of the United Nations. So if you look at the formation of this question, it reads, where was this International Solar Alliance launched? And second is regarding the membership of this International Solar Alliance. And it was asked in the year 2016 because it was launched under the leadership of India. So in this case, the first statement was correct and the second statement was incorrect. And hence the correct answer was A1 only. This is because not all the members of the United Nations are members of the International Solar Alliance. And the countries which were supposed to be the members of International Solar Alliance initially were those countries which lie between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So if you look at the question that we have formed, it reads, which of the following statements is or are correct about the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure? The first statement is that it was launched by India at the UN Secretary General's Climate Action Summit 2019. And second is that it is a partnership of only national governments to promote resilience of new and existing infrastructure systems to climate and disaster risks. So the first statement here is also related to the launch of this initiative, which has been launched by the Prime Minister of India recently. And the first statement in this question is correct because the Prime Minister of India had launched this Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure at the UN Secretary General's Climate Action Summit of 2019. Now the second statement reads that it is a partnership of only national governments to promote the resilience. So in this statement, the term only is very important to be noticed. And if you notice this and read about this Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, you will find that it is a partnership of the national governments, the UN agencies, multilateral development banks, private sector and knowledge institutions. And it is not only a partnership of the national governments. And hence the second statement is incorrect here. So the correct answer that comes out is A, that is 1 only. Now another important point regarding this coalition is that its secretariat is located in Delhi. And it is supported by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is known as the UNDRR. And further, this coalition is in line with the Sustainable Development Goal 9, which is related to development of sustainable and resilient infrastructure. And this coalition is a result of the efforts by the India and the UNDRR. And the Prime Minister of India had initially talked about such a coalition at the Asian Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction. And in this line, India and the UN Disaster Risk Reduction, along with the World Bank and UN Development Programme and the Global Commission on Adaptation, have already hosted 2 international workshops on the disaster resilient infrastructure in the year 2018 and 19. And it was based on these workshops that India formally launched the coalition. at the UN Secretary General's Climate Action Summit of 2019. So these are few important points regarding the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and to read more about this initiative, you should go through the Focus magazine of September month of 2019. So an important takeaway from this discussion is that any international initiative where India is instrumental in its formation is important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And as we have seen, a question was asked related to the International Solar Alliance, which was started under the leadership of India. And accordingly, this Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which has been started under the leadership of India, also becomes important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. After this, let's take up the next question now. Now, the next question that we have created is related to important schemes related to the education sector in India. And if you look at the previous year questions, you will find that a question was asked in the year 2017 related to Vidyanjali Yojana. Again, if you look at the previous year questions, a question was also asked in the year 2016 and it was related to Swayam portal. Now, if you look at this question which was asked in 2017, it requires us to identify the purpose of this Vidyanjali Yojana. So regarding the purpose of Vidyanjali Yojana, it was to increase the quality of education provided in the government schools by taking help from the private sector and the community. And the main aim of this program was to bring together people who are willing to volunteer their services at the schools which really need them. And hence the correct answer there was A, that is 2 only. Now, based on this previous year question, we have created a question which includes 3 important educational initiatives by different organizations. And in this line, this question reads, consider the following statements. And the first is that the imprint scheme is an initiative of the ISRO. Second is that the Yuvika scheme aims to impart space technology knowledge to the university students. And the third is that the Nishtha scheme aims to build the competencies among all the teachers and school principals at higher secondary level. Now, in this question, the imprint scheme was in news in the month of August. However, we have created this question based on 3 important initiatives related to educational sector. Now, the first statement in this question, that is the imprint scheme is an initiative of ISRO, is incorrect. Because this initiative was launched by the Ministry of HRD and it seeks to adopt engineering and technology as the vehicle to addressing the societal needs and achieving national prosperity. And it is a first of its kind Pan IIT and Indian Institute of Science and Research joint initiative to develop a new educational policy and set a roadmap for research to solve the major engineering and technology challenges in selected domains which are required in the country. And if you look at this Yuvika scheme, it is an initiative of the Indian Space Research Organization. And it does not aim to impart the space technology knowledge to the university students. However, it aims at imparting this space technology related knowledge to young scientists. And it targets those students who have just completed the 9th standard and are waiting to join the 10th standard. And as such, it does not aim at imparting the space technology knowledge to the university statements, and hence the second statement is incorrect here. And regarding the Nishtha scheme, you should note that it is not aimed at building the competencies among the teachers and school principals at the higher secondary level. However, it only aims at building such competencies for the elementary level education or the primary education level. And hence the third statement is also incorrect here. And in this line, the correct answer here is D, that is none of the above statements given are correct. So all the schemes related to the education sector become extremely important for us from the preliminary examination point of view, as we have noticed that a question is asked related to the Vidyanjali Yojana in 2017, and also a question was asked in the year 2016 related to the Swayam portal. And previously also UPSC has asked questions related to the midday meal scheme and the right to education scheme, which are also related to the educational sector. So do read about such important education related initiatives of the government. With this, let's take up the next question now. Now, the fourth question that we have created is related to the Fermi bubbles, which was in news in the month of August. Now, before looking at this question, we should look at the questions that have been asked related to space technology or space related research in the previous years in the UPSC preliminary examinations. So if you look at this question, it was asked in the year 2019 and it was related to the merger of giant black holes. Again, if you look at this question, it was asked in the year 2017 and it was related to event horizon, singularity and standard model. And again in the year 2016, a question was asked related to India's initiative related to space, which was known as the AstroSat. So regarding this question that was asked in 2017, these terms, the event horizon, singularity, string theory and standard model, are always seen in the news in the context of the observations and the understanding of the universe, and hence the correct answer is A. And if you look at this question that was asked in the year 2016 related to the AstroSat, the statement 1 is incorrect and the statement 2 is also incorrect. And this is because besides India, NASA, the Space Agency of European Union, the Japan and Russia have already launched similar facilities into the space. And regarding the AstroSat, you should note that its mass is about 1513 kilogram and it was launched into a 650 kilometer orbit. So here the correct answer was D, that is neither statement 1 nor 2 are correct. And if you look at this question that was asked in 2019, it reads, recently scientists observed the merger of giant black holes billions of light years away from the Earth. What is the significance of this observation? Now, whenever two black holes merge, they lead to the detection of gravitational waves. And this was particularly the significance of the observation that was asked in the question of 2019. And hence the correct answer was B. So these questions highlight that questions related to important space discoveries or researches that are going on can be important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And accordingly, this question related to the Fermi bubbles can also be asked in your preliminary examination. Now, this question related to the Fermi bubbles has been created because the astronomers which are working on the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope have announced that they have observed the Fermi bubbles around the galaxy, that is the Milky Way galaxy in which we live. And this is one of the path-breaking observations which has been done by this Fermi Gamma Ray Telescope. So this question reads, consider the following statements about the Fermi bubbles. First is that the Fermi bubbles emerge above and below the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Second is that they are discovered using Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope. And third is that the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope is located in Hawaii. Now regarding these Fermi bubbles, they have been observed or discovered using the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope. And accordingly, the second statement is correct here. Again, if you look at the Fermi bubbles, they emerge above and below the center of the Milky Way galaxy, as you can see in this picture here. So these are the bubbles which emerge above and below the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Now these Fermi bubbles are not visible through the naked eye. However, these bubbles emit the gamma rays and the X-rays, and these gamma rays have been observed by this Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope. And accordingly, the first statement here is also correct. Now regarding the third statement that Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope is located in Hawaii, you should know that this telescope is a satellite observatory and it circles Earth in an orbit which is at an altitude of 535 kilometers above the surface. So this means that this telescope is not located on the surface of the Earth, and hence this third statement becomes incorrect. Now this Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope started operating in June 2008. And in these 10 years, this is one of the important observations of this Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope, that is the Fermi bubbles. And hence this becomes important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And hence the correct answer here is A, that is 1 and 2 only. So this observation of the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope of the NASA is important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And this is because already UPSC has asked various questions related to the space-related observations or discoveries. With this, let's take up the next question now. Now, this fifth question is related to the Eastern Economic Forum, which was in news in the month of August and September because the Indian Prime Minister had visited this Eastern Economic Forum summit. And this question has been created based on a question that was asked in the previous years in the preliminary examination in the year 2016. And that question was related to the India-Africa summit that was held in the year 2015 in India. The question that was asked in 2016 required us to consider the statements related to this India-Africa summit that was held in India in that year. So the first statement is that the India-Africa summit held in 2015 was the third such summit, and the second statement is that it was actually initiated by Jawaharlal Nehru in the year 1951. Now, if you had followed the India-Africa summit that was held in that year, you could have easily identified that the summit which was held in 2015 was the third such summit, and hence the first statement was correct. Now, the second statement that it was actually initiated by Jawaharlal Nehru is incorrect because it was started in the year 2008 itself. Now, this statement by the UPSC was particularly added to this question to confuse the candidates. And if you read about the non-alignment movement, you would have read that the first Prime Minister of India took keen interest in the decolonization of the African countries. And this statement was particularly designed because India has always taken keen interest in the decolonization of the African countries. And as you can see, this statement was related to the first Prime Minister of India who took a keen interest in the decolonization of the African countries. However, this India-Africa summit was not initiated by Jawaharlal Nehru in the year 1951, and hence the second statement was incorrect here. So the correct answer was A, that is 1 only. Now, based on this, the question that we have found is that which of the following statements is or are correct about the Eastern Economic Forum? Now, this Eastern Economic Forum was in news because the Prime Minister of India visited this forum at its 5th meeting. And it was at this summit that the Prime Minister launched Act Far East policy for Russia and announced a support of $1 billion. So in this context, the first statement is that Russia, China and Japan are its founding members. And the second statement is that India's membership of this forum was announced at the recent visit of Prime Minister of India to Russia. Now, the first statement here is incorrect because the Eastern Economic Forum was established by the President of Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, in the year 2015. And it was established to support the economic development of Russia's Far East. And the second statement is also incorrect because India's membership was not announced at the recent visit of Prime Minister of India to Russia. And at this summit, Indian Prime Minister announced the Act Far East policy for Russia and also announced a support of $1 billion for the development of Russian Far East. Now, as India has announced its support for the development of Russian Far East, this topic related to Eastern Economic Forum becomes extremely important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. And this is because already a question was asked in the year 2016 on a similar summit related to India and Africa, which was held in the year 2015 in India. So you should always keep track of such important summits where India has shown its interests. With this, let's take up the next question now. Now, the sixth question has been created based on the Global Coalition of the Willing on the Pollinators. Now, this Global Coalition of the Willing on the Pollinators was in news in the month of August because Nigeria had become the fourth African country to join this Global Coalition of the Willing on the Pollinators. Now, this question has been formed based on another global climate change alliance about which a question was asked in the preliminary examination of the year 2017. Now, this question reads that with reference to the Global Climate Change Alliance, which of the following statements is or are correct? First statement is that it is an initiative of the EU. Second is regarding the purpose of this initiative, that is, it provides technical and financial support to targeted developing countries to integrate climate change into their developmental policies and budgets. And third is that it is coordinated by the World Resource Institute and World Business Council for the Sustainable Development. Now, normally when we see any climate change related initiative which is of global scale, we assume that this might be an initiative of the UN Environment Programme or the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And hence we will have a tendency to eliminate the first statement that is given, that is, it is an initiative of the European Union. However, the unique thing about this Global Climate Change Alliance was that it is an initiative of the European Union. However, in this question, if you knew that it is an initiative of the European Union and it is not coordinated by the World Resource Institute, etc., you could have easily eliminated the statement 3. And hence, by this, you can eliminate the options B, C, and D. And hence, the statements 1 and 2 come out to be correct, and A is the right answer of this question. So, this was a climate change related initiative which was of global scale. However, this was an initiative of the European Union and not an initiative of the UNFCCC. And normally when we have not read about such initiatives, we have a tendency to relate such initiatives to the either UNFCCC or UNEP. So similarly, this global coalition of the willing on the pollinators was in news, and the question reads, which of the following statements are correct about this coalition? First is that it was founded at the Conference of the Parties of Convention on the Biological Diversity, that is CBD. Second is that India recently joined this coalition to meet the Sustainable Development Goals related to life on land. Now, if you read about this global coalition, you will find that this coalition of the willing on the pollinators was founded at the 13th session of the Conference of Parties to the CBD, that is the CBD 13. And it was started in the year 2016. And hence the first statement here is correct. Second statement, that is India recently joined this coalition, is incorrect here. And regarding this coalition, you should note that it has 28 signatories, and which includes 17 European countries, 5 countries are from Latin America, and 4 countries are from Africa. And this was in news because Nigeria had recently joined this initiative. Further, this organization was formed to follow up on the findings of the IPBES, or the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And this was based on the assessment of this IPBES on the pollinators, pollination, and the food production. So although this global coalition of the willing on the pollinators looks huge in scale, however, only 28 countries have signed this coalition. And in this line, India has yet not joined this coalition. And such environment related initiatives are important for us from the preliminary examination, as we have seen a question was asked related to an initiative of the European Union in the year 2017. With this, let's take up the next question now. Now, this 7th question has been found based on another important current affair from the month of August. And it was related to the government's announcement of creating a joint venture company known as the Khanij Bidesh India Limited, or KABIL. And this is being set up to ensure the mineral security of India. Now, the main objective of this KABIL is to ensure a consistent supply of critical and strategic minerals to Indian domestic market, and also ensure mineral security of India. Now, in this line, the Council on Energy, Environment and Water has identified 12 critical minerals for India. And these include beryllium, germanium, lithium, cobalt, rhenium, tantalum, etc. So in this context, we have created a question related to lithium, which is extremely important in the present times. And if you look at the previous year questions, you will find that in the year 2012, a question was asked related to the rare earth metals. And this question read that recently there has been a concern over the short supply of a group of elements called as the rare earth metals. Why? And in this line, China is the largest supporter of these elements, and it had imposed some restrictions on the export of these rare earth metals in that year. Again, these rare earth metals are essential for the manufacture of various kinds of electronic items, and there has been a growing demand of these elements. So the correct answer here was C, that is 1 and 3 only. So related to this, we have formed this question which reads, with the increasing demand for electrical vehicles and battery storage, the demand for lithium has been increasing. And in this context, the lithium triangle sometimes seen in the news is identified with which of the following group of countries? So as we know that the demand for electrical vehicles has been increasing continuously in the present times, and in this context the demand for lithium has also been increasing. And in this context, this lithium triangle is seen in the news regularly, and that is why it becomes important for us for the upcoming preliminary examination. Now, as there has been an increasing demand for this lithium, India does not have commercially viable lithium deposits, and as such, the recently created KABIL, or the Khanij Bidesh India Limited, is trying to acquire the mines of cobalt and lithium in the South America. And this lithium triangle is related to a group of countries which is located in South America. And these countries are Argentina, Bolivia and Chile. And hence the correct answer here is A, that is Argentina, Bolivia and Chile are popularly known as the lithium triangle countries. Now, this lithium triangle is a contiguous region in these countries, that is Argentina, Chile and Bolivia, which together account for about 54% of the world's lithium resources. So that is why you can expect questions related to such important critical minerals which are sometimes seen in news. As you can see, a question has already been asked related to the rare earth metals in the year 2012. With this, let's take up the next question now. Now the eighth question in this line is related to the renewable energy in India. And it is an important theme related to the current affairs on which various questions have been asked in the previous years. So if you look at this question, it was asked in the year 2018. Again, this question was asked in the year 2017 and it was related to the domestic content requirement, which is related to the development of solar power production in our country. And this question that was asked in the year 2016 was related to another term, that is net metering, and it is related to the production and use of solar energy by households or consumers. And this question was asked in the year 2015, which was related to the Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency Limited. And in this case, the correct answer was C, that is both 1 and 2. So these questions highlight that in the preliminary examination, questions can be asked from current affairs related to the renewable energy sector. And if you look at this question that was asked in 2018, it reads, with reference to the solar power production in India, consider the following statements. First is that India is the third largest in the world in the manufacture of solar wafers used in photovoltaic units, which is incorrect because India does not produce any amount of solar wafers. And second is that the solar power tariffs are determined by Solar Energy Corporation of India, which is also incorrect because it is decided or determined by the Central Electricity Regulation Commission. And hence the correct answer here was D, that is neither 1 nor 2. So in this context, we have created this eighth question based on another important notification of the Government of India related to the renewable energy. And in this line, in an effort to boost the development of ocean energy, the central government has recently approved a proposal to consider the ocean energy as renewable energy. And accordingly, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy has clarified that ocean energy shall be considered as renewable energy. So in this regard, this question reads, which of the following is or are recognized as renewable energy by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy? First is that hydropower projects with capacity of less than 25 megawatts, hydropower projects with capacity greater than 25 megawatts, and third is the ocean energy. Now, if you look at the recent notifications of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, you will find that ocean energy has been recognized as a renewable energy by the ministry. Further, the hydropower projects with capacity of less than 25 megawatts were already recognized as renewable energy by the ministry. However, recently it was decided that all the hydropower projects or the large hydropower projects which have a capacity greater than 25 megawatts will also be considered as renewable energy. And this has been decided by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. So in this line, the correct answer is D, that is 1, 2, 3, all are correct. So hence, any important government decision which is taken related to the renewable energy sector can be extremely important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So you should keep a track of all the new notifications that are coming out related to the renewable energy or any major change that is being done by the government related to the renewable energy sector. With this, let's take up the next question now. Now, this ninth question has been created based on one of the important current affairs from the month of August. And this was related to the transfer of surplus reserves from the Reserve Bank of India to the Government of India. And this issue had generated much debate about this transfer of surplus reserves from the RBI to the government. Now, this question has been designed based on a previous year question which was asked in the year 2013. And this was related to the India's foreign exchange reserves. And we note that India's foreign exchange reserves are continuously in news. So this question read, which of the following groups of items is included in India's foreign exchange reserves? So if you look at the options, these foreign exchange reserves include the foreign currency assets, gold holdings of the Reserve Bank of India, and the special drawing rights of the IMF. So B was the correct answer here. Now, regarding the transfer of surplus reserves from the RBI to the government, you should know that the RBI has recently decided to transfer a sum of rupees 1.76 lakh crore to the government. And this is the highest ever transfer from the RBI to the government. Now, this transfer is done based on the Reserve Bank of India Act of 1934. And the section 47 of the Reserve Bank of India Act states that the profits made by the Reserve Bank of India from its operation have to be sent to the central government. So in this line, the question based on this reads that which among the following is or are considered to be the assets of Reserve Bank of India? And the options are the government securities or the G-Secs that are lying with the Reserve Bank of India, Second are the cash reserve ratio deposits of the banks with RBI. Then there is currency in circulation and the loans to the commercial banks. Now the assets of the RBI are those which earn profits for it. And the main sources of income for the RBI are the returns on the foreign currency assets such as the bonds and the treasury bills of the central banks, interest on its holdings of domestically issued government bonds or securities, interest on the loans given to the banks, and management commission on the handling the borrowings of state governments and the central governments. And in this line, if you look at the options that are given in this question, the assets of the Reserve Bank of India include the government securities that are lying with the Reserve Bank of India. So the first is correct, and second is the loans that is forwarded by the RBI to the commercial banks. And as such, the statements 1 and 4 are correct, and the correct answer here is C, that is 1 and 4 only. And the cash reserve ratio deposits of the banks with the RBI is not an asset of the Reserve Bank of India. And again, the currency that is in circulation is also not an asset of the Reserve Bank of India. Now, this issue of transfer of surplus reserves from the RBI to the government had generated much debate. So you should go through this issue from the September Focus magazine, and that will help you in understanding the various aspects of this debate which was related to this transfer of reserves from RBI to the government. And this can be particularly a very important topic for us from the preliminary examination as well as the mains examination point of view. With this, let's take up the next and the last question for this discussion. Now, this 10th question has been created based on the coal sector in India, and it is related to the recent changes done by the government of India related to this coal sector. Now, if you look at the questions that have been asked in the preliminary examination in the previous years, you will find that various questions have been asked related to this coal sector. For example, this question was asked in the year 2019. And if you look at these questions that were asked in the previous years, you will find that there was a question in the year 2018. Again, there was a question in the year 2015, and there was a question in the year 2012. Now, this question that was asked in 2018 had a statement related to, in India, state governments do not have the power to auction non-coal mines. Again, if you look at this question that was asked in 2012, so it was related to the import of coal in India. So it reads, despite having large reserves of coal, why does India import millions of tons of coal? If you look at this question that was asked in 2015, it reads, in India, the steel industry requires the import of, and it was related to coking coal. So the questions in the previous years have been related to the import of coal in India, and also related to various government decisions related to the coal sector. And if you look at this question that was asked in 2019, it reads that coal sector was nationalized by the government of India under Indira Gandhi. Second is that now coal blocks are allotted or allocated on a lottery basis. And third is that till recently, India imported coal to meet the shortages of domestic supply, but now India is self-sufficient in coal production. So again, you can see that the question that was asked in 2019 was also related to the import of coal and the government's policy regarding the coal sector. And if you knew that India is not self-sufficient in the coal production, you could have eliminated the third statement, and by this you can easily eliminate the options B, C and D. And hence the correct answer that comes out is 1 only. So the previous year questions highlight that the coal sector is one of the important sector for preliminary examination, and on which various questions have been asked. So this question reads, consider the following statements related to the coal sector in India. And the first is that the government allows 100% FDI under the automatic route for coal mining in India. And second is that the captive coal mine operators are allowed to sell only 25% of the extracted coal in the open market. Now, in the month of August, the government of India decided to provide 100% FDI or foreign direct investment under the automatic route in the coal and lignite mining, and hence the first statement that is given here is correct. However, the second statement that the captive coal mine operators are allowed to sell only 25% of the extracted coal in the open market is an incorrect statement, and this is because this limit on the captive coal mining was removed recently by the government of India. And earlier, the captive coal mine operators were allowed to sell only 25% of the extracted coal in the open market. And now the government has allowed these captive coal mine operators to sell their entire coal in the open market. And thus the government has put an end to the captive coal mining regime itself in India. And hence the correct answer here is A, that is 1 only. So this is an important decision of the government of India that they have ended the captive coal mining regime in India. And regarding captive coal mining, you should note that these mines were allocated to various industries who could extract coal from these coal mines and generate electricity for their own use. And they were not earlier allowed to sell the coal that they extract in the open market. And by various policy changes, the government has now ended this captive coal mining regime itself. So these two decisions, that the 100% FDI is now allowed under automatic route for coal mining and there has been an end to the captive coal mining regime in India, are important for us from the preliminary examination point of view.
So with this we conclude today's discussion, and by solving these questions you might have got an idea about how UPSC is making questions in its preliminary examination. So accordingly you should approach other current affairs from this perspective only.